Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and we're going to review the iPad Air 2. I've had this since the day it came out, and it's been about a week and a half or two, and I've been using it every single day, and I thought I'd give you my review of it. Now, I've had this, been using this as opposed to my iPad Air 1, which is right here. I reviewed this last year, and it's been great. And you can see it has this bar here, which means it's the LTE model. I decided not to go with the LTE model this time. Still the same color, space gray, but I really found I don't really use this too much. And so I decided to go with the Wi-Fi model. Plus it's a little bit cheaper. So you have a different choice of different iPads like you always have, but they've changed some of the memory around. So in this case, this is the middle line one, where this used to be one of the higher end ones. But what we have here is the 64 gigabyte space gray Wi-Fi model. You can also get it in gold and silver. So just like your iPhones, you can get them in the same colors now. Now this one, like I said, is Wi-Fi, so that means this one was $599. So they come in at $499 for a 16 gigabyte model, $599 and $699. And then if you want to, and that's for a 128 gigabyte model, and then if you want to step up to the LTE model, tack an additional $129 on for that antenna. So it can get pretty pricey. But in this case, I'm really happy with what I chose. I really don't find I use that. The only disadvantage is this does not have the actual GPS antenna in it. You still can use that functionality, but it's not quite as accurate because it's incorporated into that LTE chip. So this one I really like. It is insanely thin. It's actually a little bit over a millimeter thinner than the previous version. Let me show you that here. And honestly, at this point, I really don't find that necessary. I don't know why you need to make it that incredibly thin, but you can see it's thinner. I do have a skin on this one, so you're going to notice that a little bit, but there's not really a need to make it that thin in my opinion, with the sacrifice being battery life. Now they still claim you'll get 10 hours battery life, and it's been doing pretty well, but that said, you could have kept it the same thickness and added a slightly bigger battery and got even more battery life. I would love to see an iPad that gets 20 or 30 hours of battery life, and I think most people would agree, but you will have to sacrifice some weight. And this is super light and super thin, so thin that it feels like you're going to break it. Now let's go over some of the little bit of differences. You can see we've got Touch ID now. You can unlock it with your fingerprint. Let's turn it off here, touch hold, and it unlocks. So as long as you assign a fingerprint, just like your iPhone 5S and 6 or 6 Plus, you can unlock it the same way. We also have a better forward-facing camera. We have a better 8-megapixel rear camera, which has some new lenses in it. Basically the equivalent of an iPhone 5S, different sensor. Should be a lot better and is a lot better. You can see they've moved the microphones. Here we have a microphone here and here. They usually have two for noise canceling. On the iPad Air 1, we have one right there, and we have one on top as well. So you can see there's one up here also. So they've moved those around. They've also changed the speakers on the bottom. Again, let me quickly compare this for you. You can see the speakers are slightly different on the old one up here versus the new one. And then finally the other difference is on the side. The rotate switch on the old one is now not on the new one, so they've changed that as well. And that's basically because it's so thin, you no longer need it. And for most people, you can just lock it by using the command center here. You can just lock the rotation right there. So not too big of a deal these days as far as that goes. Now the overall usability of it's quite nice. The front is a little bit different. It's actually laminated glass for the first time. So since the iPhone 4, we've actually had laminated glass. That means they took the glass and actually glued it to the LCD panel underneath. And what that does is makes everything come out a little bit more, pop out a little bit more, and sit right on the screen. It's a really nice looking display because of that. By laminating the screen, they actually reduce the internal reflectivity off the display in the glass, and then they also put an additional coating on top of it, which makes it even less reflective. And as you can see, here are two different iPads. iPad 1 without any screen protectors on either, and you can see the reflection. There's the light in both, and maybe that'll help you see kind of the difference. It is slightly different. You definitely do get less reflectivity. You can see it's brighter on the right side than the left, so it does work. I don't know that I'd say you could read it outside like a Kindle tablet, for example, but it's much better than it used to be as far as that goes. I really don't see things reflecting behind me for the most part. Now, one thing I never said with my iPad Air is this thing is just too slow, I need a faster one. But Apple has actually added a different chip called the A8X chip, and that actually brings the speed up significantly. In many different apps, it's much, much faster. It never, ever, ever lags. They've also upped the internal RAM to 2 gigabytes. And I know a lot of people say, well, some Android phones and tablets have a lot more internal RAM, but that really doesn't matter if the operating system isn't consistently smooth. iOS does a pretty good job of that, and I do occasionally get a hiccup on the iPad Air 1 with certain types of streaming video. Never really see it on the iPad Air 2. As for battery, one thing I mentioned before, let's take a look at usage. We're at 72% charge. And let's go to battery usage here. You can see I've had it on 5 hours, 35 minutes of screen time, roughly, using it with different video and things like that. So it's getting very good, very, very good battery life. Strange thing contacts background activity. Maybe it was syncing or something. But pretty good. Standby 22 hours. I haven't charged it in a day and a half or so. Well, a day, I guess, according to this. So it's been a while, and I've been pretty happy with the battery. I was concerned at first that it would be less, but with that new A8X chip, it seems to be just fine. Durability over time somewhat concerns me just because this feels so thin. I can actually push in. I could probably bend it if I wanted to, but I can actually push this. I can feel it flex, and I can feel that on the iPhone 6 as well. You can squeeze it and feel it flex a little bit. I thought the iPad Air 1 was too thin with it feeling flexing and things, but this actually feels a little more sturdy than the iPad Air 2. Now, I don't think that you're going to have a problem. Obviously, if you sat on it or something like that, you could bend it. But I don't think you're going to have a problem with this long-term durability-wise. Obviously, upgrading, one of the things you want to know is how does it handle apps. And Pixelmator is one of the latest apps. You can see the icon. It actually looks like a flipped version and a different color version of iPhoto that they got rid of from Apple. But Pixelmator is a full-on image editor. And I actually use Pixelmator on the Mac all the time. It's a good alternative to Photoshop. And I find I'm a little bit faster in it than I am with Photoshop. Now, it doesn't do some of the things Photoshop does, but for the most part, it's really nice to use. You can see I'm just shrinking my logo down here, moving the LG G3 around, and I can do layers, do all sorts of things, transparencies. You've got lots of different things you can do with Pixelmator, and it's super fast. You can see I can add some text, move that around, make it a little bit bigger. It's really intuitive, and if we turn it this way, it's even better to use. But we have all sorts of different things we can do. It's a pretty much full-blown image editor, just like you would use on the Mac. You can do a lot of those things here. It does take a little bit of getting used to because you're using your hands, but for the most part, it's really nice. And holding this is nice because of it's so light, being so light. And the one thing I'm probably going to get asked the most, though, is it worth the upgrade from the iPad Air 1? And I would say probably not. If you've come from an iPad Air 1 and you're going to an iPad Air 2, unless you need to edit video or edit images with Pixelmator or the Adobe apps like Lightroom I've got there, you probably aren't going to notice too big of a difference, and it will be more of just a waste of money at this point. Unless you really have to have the thinness and the Touch ID, I don't see much of an advantage going from this super thin iPad to this even thinner iPad. I actually miss this one a little bit just because it's got that top of the line feel, LTE. I've used it for a while. It feels durable. This is not LTE, but that really doesn't matter. I was debating should I keep it or return it, but I'm pretty happy with it now. It's incredible every time I pick it up how thin it is. Long term, I'm sure I'm going to love this iPad. It's been great so far. I'll probably eventually put a skin on the back like I did the other one, but it's held up incredibly well so far. I'm not rough with my devices by any means, and I do use a smart cover on it. I've used screen protectors, but I generally take them off of my iPads because I just like to use the glass display itself. It's nice to use just the glass. But I'd love to hear what you have to say about the iPad Air 2. Do you think it's worth the upgrade? If you have an iPad Air 1, will you be upgrading? I would definitely say that if you have any of the previous iPads and you're looking for a new one, this would be a huge upgrade for you. But if you're coming from an iPad Air 1, save your money unless you've got a really compelling reason to get one. And the camera may be that reason, but if you've got an iPhone 6, stick to the iPhone. It's a little bit better. But again, let me know what you think in the comments below. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe and like the video. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.